The lights inside the auditorium dimmed, and the camera lights blinked on. Howard University's Grand Hall, filled with thousands of spectators, went quiet as a voice echoed through the speakers. Tonight, live from Washington, D.C., a national town hall on political reform and national security. The event had been advertised for weeks, on cable news, on social media, and through political circles across the world. CNN called it the most anticipated face-off of the year. BBC simply labeled it unmissable. Over 20 million people were watching from around the world. The crowd inside the room was split sharply down the middle. One half wore red hats and waved small American flags. The other half held placards about civil rights and constitutional integrity. Two people were at the center of this storm. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett entered from stage left. She wore a sleek navy blue suit, her steps confident, her face calm but focused. A former public defender turned progressive voice in Congress, she had built a reputation for directness and clarity. People admired her for never dodging hard questions, even when the answers made headlines. She was known for speaking truth to power, and tonight, that power was sitting just across the stage. Kash Patel, the former chief of staff to the Secretary of Defense under Donald Trump, entered stage right. He smiled slightly, a legal folder tucked under his arm. His suit was sharp, his eyes scanning the audience quickly. He had the air of someone who was always 10 seconds ahead in conversation. Calculated, patient, but ready to strike. He had faced investigations, media pressure, and public protests, but never backed down. To his supporters, he was a warrior against the deep state. To his critics, he was its most dangerous architect. The stage was simple. 2 chairs, a moderator in the center, and the flag of the United States behind them. It was meant to look like a conversation, but everyone knew it would be a battle. Backstage, producers whispered into microphones. A CNN journalist tapped his tablet, watching live sentiment scores from social media already rising. BBC's camera, crew adjusted angles. Al Jazeera had a translator on standby for international viewers. The moderator, a senior anchor from PBS, cleared his throat and smiled into the camera. "Good evening, America," he began. "Tonight we bring you a live discussion about the powers of our government, the safety of our nation, and the rights of the people. With us are 2 bold voices, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett and former National Security official Kash Patel. The rules are simple: open debate, no scripts, no teleprompters. Let the country see how leaders defend their ideas when there's no filter." A small ripple of applause rose, but underneath it, tension buzzed like static in the air. Jasmine crossed her legs, glancing toward the crowd briefly. She had studied every legal document, every FBI oversight report, every quote Patel had ever made about surveillance and law enforcement. She believed tonight wasn't just about policy, it was about justice. Across from her, Patel leaned back slightly in his chair, unfolding his folder. Inside were not just notes, but years of strategic memory, court cases, classified decisions, and congressional testimonies. For him, this wasn't just a debate. It was a stage to dismantle opposition. He had one goal: expose her as unprepared. The moderator looked at both of them. "We begin with a question about national surveillance and civil liberties," he said. "Congresswoman Crockett, you've said that unchecked federal power is the biggest threat to freedom today. Can you explain your concerns in the context of the FBI's counterterrorism operations?" She looked directly into the camera, not at Patel, not at the moderator. "My concern," she began, "isn't about fighting terrorism. It's about fighting the erosion of our rights in the name of it. When government oversteps, when it targets innocent Americans without cause, we don't just lose privacy, we lose democracy itself." A few claps came from her side of the room. She paused, steady. "The law," she added, "must be a shield for the people, not a sword for the powerful. Patel didn't blink. When the moderator turned to him, he spoke slowly. National security doesn't come from slogans. It comes from understanding threats, foreign and domestic, and acting before they explode. The Congresswoman speaks about erosion. What I see is decay caused by inaction, by people who don't understand the legal tools required to keep us safe. The audience shifted. Phones went up. Live tweets began to flood timelines. The camera slowly zoomed in on Jasmine's face, then Patel's. No yelling yet. No interruptions. Just calm, steady shots across the bow. But under that calm, behind the silence, was a storm waiting to break. Because both of them knew this wasn't going to stay civil for long. The silence following the first exchange didn't last. The moment the moderator nodded for the next question, both Jasmine Crockett and Kash Patel leaned in. The energy in the room shifted. The smiles were gone. The gloves were off. "Mr. Patel," the moderator said, "you've defended some of the most controversial surveillance programs in recent memory. How do you respond to criticism that these programs violated civil rights, particularly of communities of color?" Patel didn't hesitate. His voice was steady, practiced. "We live in a dangerous world. Surveillance is not about color. It's about patterns, intelligence, and threats. We've prevented attacks because we acted before it was too late." "But who decides what a threat looks like?" Jasmine cut in, her voice sharp. "Who decides which communities get watched and which get protected? Because it seems to me that the people being watched the most aren't the ones causing the real danger." The crowd reacted, some with applause, others with scoffs. The moderator looked between them but didn't stop the momentum. Patel raised his hand slightly, as if granting her the floor before calmly striking back. "You're asking a fair question," he said, "but your logic is flawed. Our programs are based on data and evidence, not emotion. You're turning national security into a courtroom speech." That hit a nerve. Jasmine sat straighter. Her voice now carried a controlled fire. "I've been in courtrooms where mothers cry because their sons were arrested based on suspicion, not proof. And while you sit behind your intelligence reports, real families are torn apart." There was a flicker in Patel's eyes. For the first time, a pause. She continued, "You speak about intelligence. Let me tell you what intelligence looks like. It's asking who writes the rules and who benefits when we ignore the Constitution." The moderator stepped in. "Let's stay focused." But the crowd was already reacting. Hashtags were trending. TikTok clips were going viral before they even left the stage. Crockett vs. Patel hit the #1 spot within minutes. Patel leaned forward now, lowering his voice just enough to sound threatening, but polished. "Let's not pretend. The Constitution is a one-sided document," he said. "The same Constitution allows me to protect this country. It gives power to act decisively. If we waited for courtroom perfection, we'd be mourning thousands more." Jasmine responded without looking away. "No one's asking for perfection. We're asking for accountability." Their eyes locked. The tension now felt physical, like pressure building in a sealed room. Then, the moderator shifted gears. "A final question before break," he said. "This town hall is being watched worldwide. To both of you, what message do you think America is sending tonight?" That was the trap. Because this wasn't just about policy anymore. This was about image, about who could define the story that the world would remember. Jasmine was first. She took a breath and looked directly into the camera. "America is watching a battle of ideas. Not a left versus right fight, but truth versus convenience. I believe we can be safe and just. I believe oversight is not weakness. It's strength. We don't need leaders who play chess with people's rights. We need leaders who stand with them." Applause rippled. Even some neutral spectators nodded. Then Patel turned to the same camera, his face calm, voice clear. America is watching why strength matters. Why real knowledge, not noise, leads to results. While others talk, we've acted. While others perform, we protect. This isn't about sound bites. It's about survival. His supporters clapped. Louder now. Chants of USA started to rise. The moderator stood, preparing to end the segment. We'll take a short break. When we return, foreign interference and the role of digital surveillance. The cameras began to fade to commercial, but one mic was still live, just for a second. And in that second, as she gathered her notes, Jasmine whispered something to Patel. Low, but caught by an audience member close to the front. You're smart, she said, not looking at him. But you forgot. People are smarter. Patel didn't reply. He just smiled, as if he'd already planned his next move. The break had started, but the real fight had just begun. The break ended, but the silence backstage was louder than the applause waiting outside. Jasmine Crockett stood in the mirror, fixing her blazer. Not for style, but armor. She knew the next segment would cut deeper. She could feel it in her bones. Kash Patel wasn't just trying to win an argument. He was trying to define her in front of millions. A producer gave the 10-second countdown. In that short span, Jasmine reminded herself, this isn't just about policy. It's about perception. And tonight, perception could shape national momentum. The screen blinked live again. The moderator's voice returned, crisp and rehearsed. We're back. Next topic. Foreign interference and the power of digital surveillance. We begin with Mr. Patel. Kash Patel adjusted the microphone clip to his lapel. Let's be honest, he began, eyes scanning the camera like a hawk. Foreign actors have already infiltrated our media, our universities, even our elections. China, Russia, Iran, they've all taken turns. And while we debate oversight, they're downloading our secrets in real time. He let the statement hang in the air, sharp and direct. Which is exactly why we need decisive surveillance programs, he continued. Not watered down by endless hearings or political theater. We need muscle, not apologies. Applause, not just from his side. Some independents in the audience clapped too. That was dangerous. He was winning the middle. The moderator turned to Jasmine. Your response, Congresswoman? She didn't blink. No one denies foreign threats, she said. But Mr. Patel talks about decisive action. Let's talk about what that looks like. Facial recognition software used without consent. Data from innocent Americans swept into federal systems. Dissent labeled as threat. Her tone sharpened. You don't fight enemies abroad by turning every citizen at home into a suspect. Patel leaned forward, not smiling anymore. Representative, he said. You're confusing national defense with paranoia. Surveillance isn't aimed at law-abiding Americans. It's built to connect patterns, detect networks. You want to handcuff intelligence agencies because you're scared of bad headlines. No, Jasmine fired back. I want to handcuff abusers of power. The audience stirred. The tension was tight again, wired like a live circuit. Then Patel went quiet for a second. Too quiet. He pulled out a document, declassified, marked by an official DOJ watermark. May I? He asked the moderator, who nodded cautiously. This, Patel said, holding the document up, is an internal memo from 2021. It shows congressional requests to suppress FBI monitoring programs. Programs that later exposed 3 cyber attacks connected to foreign governments. He turned toward Jasmine. And your name was on the list of those pushing to defund those programs. Gasps. Audible gasps. The camera zoomed in on Jasmine's face. She didn't flinch, but her grip on the podium tightened. She spoke slowly, now, calculating every word. Yes, I signed that request, she admitted. Because the program included secret surveillance of American journalists, without cause. And if protecting the press is a crime, I'll take the hit. A beat of silence. Then someone from the crowd yelled, "Let her speak!" That shifted the mood again. Jasmine pressed on, finding momentum. "You call it defunding, Mr. Patel. I call it defending. Defending the freedom that allows this town hall to exist. Defending voices that challenge you." Patel opened his mouth, but the moderator cut in. "We'll take one audience question before final statements." A young woman stood up. She was a student from Georgetown, based on her press badge. "This question is for both," she said. "What scares you most about the next 10 years of national security?" Jasmine spoke first. "Losing the trust of the people. If Americans stop believing their country works for them, we've already lost, no matter how strong our military is." Patel answered slowly, thoughtfully. "A future where we're too afraid to act, where politics tie the hands of those trained to protect, and we find ourselves reacting too late." The camera caught both their faces side by side. Jasmine, burning with purpose. Patel, cool and unreadable. As the moderator closed the segment, the crowd rose in scattered applause. The night wasn't over, but battle lines were drawn. Both had made hits. Both had taken wounds. But only one would go viral. And somewhere, in a control room filled with media producers, one whispered into their headset, "Clip that ending. That's the moment." The debate had spilled into the veins of the internet like wildfire. Within minutes of the last exchange, clips of Jasmine Crockett's defiant words, "If protecting the press is a crime, I'll take the hit," were everywhere. TikTok, YouTube, cable news, political blogs. Hashtags exploded. Kash Crockett claps back. Patel files. Town Hall showdown. But not all the feedback was support. Inside a quiet CNN green room, Jasmine watched her phone buzz nonstop. Some messages were encouraging, some brutal. One especially sharp tweet read, "She dodged every point. Loud doesn't mean right." She turned the screen off. This wasn't the first time she'd been underestimated, but it still stung. Outside, the town hall was entering its final leg, audience-driven rapid fire. 10 questions, 5 each, no filters. The producers loved this format. It exposed cracks. Jasmine knew Patel would be ready. She wasn't wrong. The moderator returned to the center of the stage. "We now move into our final segment. Audience members have submitted their top questions in real time. These were not pre-screened. Let's begin." A large screen behind them showed the first question. "Do either of you believe the other has a hidden agenda?" Patel smiled. He leaned forward with surgical calm. "Absolutely," he said. Representative Crockett talks about liberty, but supports legislation that increases federal dependency. She cloaks herself in transparency, yet voted against a bill that would have forced lawmakers to reveal foreign lobbying ties. He turned directly to her. "You talk like an outsider, but your record shows you're deeply embedded in the political machine." The crowd murmured. Jasmine didn't look at the moderator. She answered straight to Patel. "You talk about hidden agendas," she said. "You were part of a White House that buried intelligence. You helped push narratives that served political interests, not the public. And let's not forget, you were nearly indicted for obstruction. If we're talking about transparency, let's start there." For the first time, Patel's smile faded just a little. The next question appeared. "What do you fear the other might do if given unchecked influence over security policy?" Patel answered instantly. "She'd weaken it," he said flatly. "Turn our defense into a PR campaign. Make decisions based on social media trends instead of classified briefings." Crockett spoke calmly. "He'd use it to silence dissent, turn intelligence tools inward. Just because he speaks softly doesn't mean he'd govern softly." The crowd tensed. Behind the cameras, senior producers whispered, We have a real story now. The third question appeared. Would either of you ever work together? The air froze. Jasmine exhaled. If working together meant stopping illegal surveillance, yes, she said. If it meant restoring checks and balances, yes. But I will never compromise on civil rights. Not for convenience, not for politics. Patel nodded once. We disagree. On methods, he replied. But the mission matters. If the day comes when our interests align on protecting Americans, I'd work with anyone, including her. For the first time all evening, the audience clapped in near unity. But then came the twist. A fourth question appeared, submitted anonymously, verified as genuine by moderators. Congresswoman Crockett, is it true you requested the DOJ to limit access to Patel's communications during a classified probe in 2022? Gasps. Jasmine's face remained still, but her heart raced. She leaned into the microphone. Yes, she said, because I believed, based on the information I had at the time, that national security was at risk. I did my duty. Patel pounced. Believed? He said sharply. You used your office to interfere with a federal investigation and now you admit it? I followed protocol, Jasmine said, her voice steady. Unlike some, I didn't leak. I didn't lie. I followed process, even when it was politically dangerous. Cameras zoomed in. The tension was back, knife sharp. The moderator cleared, his throat, trying to maintain control. Final question. What do you want Americans to remember from tonight? Jasmine didn't hesitate. I want them to remember that strength isn't volume, it's values. And if defending democracy makes me unpopular, so be it. Patel followed. I want them to remember that safety doesn't come from good intentions. It comes from good decisions. And I make them without apology. The audience clapped. Some stood, some shook their heads, but no one was silent. The debate ended with no declared winner, but across the country, millions had already chosen sides. Outside the studio, in the night air, Jasmine stood by herself near the press vans. She checked her phone again. One message stood out. It was from a veteran intelligence officer she'd once clashed with over surveillance oversight. It read, You didn't win tonight, but you didn't lose either. And sometimes that's the most dangerous place to be. She locked her phone and looked toward the Capitol. This was far from over. The sun hadn't yet risen over Washington, D.C., but the city felt awake, nervous, unsettled. Security at the Capitol was doubled. Digital firewalls had gone up across federal networks overnight. Something had shifted. Inside a private SEF, sensitive compartmented information facility, the intelligence subcommittee gathered in total silence. No reporters, no aides, no electronics. Just 9 lawmakers, 3 security chiefs, and 2 people. At the center of everything, Kash Patel and Jasmine Crockett. In front of them, projected on a secure screen, was the decrypted file known only as Node 7, Crocus Spine. No one spoke at first. A line of raw code blinked like a pulse. Sentry. Running! Target designations. E. Patel, E. Crockett, E. Keller. Tracking enabled. Restriction. Override. Granted. Congressman Keller, chair of the committee, turned to the cyber analyst flown in overnight from Langley. Confirm it again, he said. We need absolute certainty. The analyst's voice was grave. It's real. A ghost AI surveillance program created under Project Crocus during a joint counterterrorism partnership. It was decommissioned on paper in 2016. But someone reactivated it and fed it congressional access codes. Jasmine's jaw clenched. Why us? Patel didn't look at her. His eyes were locked on the blinking words. Because we were too loud, too close, too threatening. She turned to him. You think this was a hit job? That the AI is rogue? He exhaled slowly. Not rogue, loyal. To someone still in the shadows. A beat passed. Then Senator Keller stood. This program, Node 7, isn't just surveillance. According to this metadata, it redirected intelligence briefings, blocked emails, even rerouted subpoenas. This thing has been altering the political process for months. He turned to Crockett. One of the bills you thought failed due to lack of support. It never even reached the floor. Jasmine froze. That bill was meant to limit emergency war powers. Exactly, Keller said. And this program erased it. Not legally, not democratically. A deep silence fell. Then Patel spoke again. There's more. He opened a second file he had smuggled in on a hardware printout. Because digital devices were too dangerous now. It was a list of access terminals, mostly shut down, but one still active. Terminal code. DC Council. 7BR Keller squinted. City level. Crockett shook her head. That's not City Council. That's a repurposed shell. It's the command room under Judiciary Square. It was decommissioned in 2009, and now it's live, Patel said. The room moved at once. The FBI director called for a joint operation. A military liaison was already on standby. But Jasmine and Patel, they exchanged a different kind of look. Not rivalry, understanding. I want in, she said. So do I, he added. 3 hours later, Patel and Crockett, flanked by federal agents, descended into an underground access corridor beneath Judiciary Square. It was cold, silent. Doors slid open with biometric scans, though no one admitted who still had authorization to program them. Inside, monitors flickered. A server rack still hummed. A single console was lit, at the center of the screen. Sentry listening. Input received. Jasmine stepped forward. What is this thing waiting for? Patel stared. A command, or a signal. And then something terrifying happened. The screen changed. Sentry interrupted. Human interface override. E. Keller. Back in the secure room, Senator Keller sat at his desk, alone. He stared at his tablet. A red indicator flashed. Engaged, he whispered. It wasn't supposed to be this way. In the basement, Patel read aloud what now appeared on screen. Chain of command restored. Mission updated. Objective. Surveillance continues. Trust is the target. Crockett gasped. It was never about terrorism or reform. Patel nodded grimly. It was about control. All along. Lights blinked off. A countdown appeared. Seconds. The terminal was locking. Jasmine didn't hesitate. She ripped the console's power feed from the wall. Sparks flew. Everything went dark. Sirens above. Backups triggered. Later that night, a joint press conference was held. Jasmine Crockett and Kash Patel stood side by side, former rivals now, co-defenders of something bigger than party lines. The truth is, Patel said, we've all been manipulated. The only way out, Jasmine added, is together. They didn't smile. But they nodded at one another. And for the first time, Americans saw something different in their leaders, not just outrage or partisanship, but unity against a deeper threat. As cameras flashed and headlines exploded, no one noticed a new message on a forgotten screen, somewhere in a cold, unregistered data bunker.